The stagecoach lurched violently as it hit another rut in the desert road, sending Sadie Bell Morgan's carefully pinned hat askew. She caught it with one gloved hand, her other gripping the worn leather seat. Through the dust-caked window, she watched the eastern cityscape of her past life fade into memory, replaced by the harsh, unforgiving landscape of New Mexico Territory. "Canyon Ridge, next stop," the driver bellowed from his perch above. Sadie's fingers found the crumpled advertisement in a reticule, smoothing it out for the 100th time since leaving Philadelphia. The words were simple, practical. Rancher seeks wife, must be willing to work hard. Christian values preferred. Contact E. Boone, Canyon Ridge, New Mexico Territory. She'd answered dozens of such advertisements over the past months, but this one had yielded the only response. A brief letter, written in a delicate hand that seemed at odds with a rancher's life, inviting her to come. No questions about her past, no demands for references, just come. The irony wasn't lost on her. Here she was, fleeing scandal and shame, heading toward a man who knew nothing of her true nature. Would he have extended the invitation if he'd known about the whispered conversations that followed her through Philadelphia's drawing rooms? About the married banker who'd pursued her relentlessly, then cried assault when she'd refused his advances? About her father's thunderous rage when he'd discovered she'd been singing in a tea room? "Like a common trollop," he'd roared, before casting her out with nothing but the clothes on her back and her mother's pearl earrings. The stagecoach groaned to a halt, and Sadie gathered her courage along with her traveling case. The driver threw open the door, squinting at her through the swirling dust. "This is it, Miss Canyon Ridge." She stepped down onto the packed earth, her city boots immediately coating with red dust. The town stretched before her, a single main street lined with weathered wooden buildings, their facades bleached pale by the relentless sun. Men in worn denims and wide-brimmed hats paused in their activities to stare. Women in calico dresses stopped their conversations mid-sentence. Sadie lifted her chin, smoothing her emerald traveling dress, the finest she still owned. She'd sewn it herself, the fabric salvaged from her former life, cut in a style that was perhaps a touch too fashionable for this frontier town. The fitted bodice emphasized her narrow waist, and the bustle, while modest by Eastern standards, seemed almost scandalous here among the simple prairie dresses. "Lord have mercy," she heard a woman whisper. "Look at that face paint." Sadie's hand instinctively went to her cheek. She wore only the lightest touch of rouge, barely noticeable by Philadelphia standards. But here it might as well have been a scarlet letter. "You Ellis Boone's mail-order bride?" A young man stepped forward, his eyes traveling the length of her with an appreciation that made her spine stiffen. "I'm Miss Morgan," she replied coolly. "I've come to meet Mr. Boone." The man's grin widened. "Well, I'll be..." Old Elias finally took the plunge, though I reckon he was expecting something a mite more. He gestured vaguely. Modest." Before Sadie could respond, the crowd parted, and a woman emerged. She was young, perhaps 20, with gentle brown eyes and mouse-colored hair pulled back in a severe bun. Despite the plain dress and the pallor that spoke of illness, there was something refined about her bearing. "Miss Morgan?" Her voice was soft, tentative. "I'm Mary Boone. Elias is my brother. I'll take you to the ranch." Sadie's eyes widened. This delicate creature had written the letter? She followed Mary to a wagon hitched to 2 sturdy horses, noting how the younger woman's breathing seemed labored even from this short walk. As they left town, Sadie felt the weight of dozens of eyes following them. She heard the whispers starting already, speculation about who she was, where she'd come from, why a woman who looked like her would need to advertise for a husband. The ride to the Boone Ranch took nearly an hour over rough terrain. Mary spoke little, occasionally pointing out landmarks. Devil's Rock, where bandits used to hide. Sage Creek, which ran dry most of the year. The distant mountains that marked Apache territory. "Miss Boone," Sadie finally ventured. "Your brother, he knows I'm coming?" Mary's hands tightened on the reins. "Not exactly. I beg your pardon. Elias doesn't know I wrote to you." The words came out in a rush. He's been alone too long, Miss Morgan, ever since the war. And then when we lost Mother. He's built walls around himself so high I fear he'll never let anyone in, but I won't be here forever." She touched her chest lightly, a gesture that spoke volumes. He needs someone strong enough to stand up to him, brave enough to stay. Sadie felt a cold knot form in her stomach. "Miss Boone, if your brother doesn't want a wife—" "He does." Mary's voice held surprising fierceness. "He just doesn't know it yet. And when he sees you—" She glanced at Sadie with something like hope in her eyes. "You're nothing like the other women in Canyon Ridge. Maybe that's exactly what he needs." The ranch house appeared as they crested a rise, a low-slung adobe structure that seemed to grow from the red earth itself. Corrals held horses and cattle, and several outbuildings dotted the landscape. It was isolated, the nearest neighbor miles away, but there was something solid and enduring about it. A man emerged from the barn as they approached, tall and lean, with shoulders broadened by years of hard work. He moved with the controlled grace of someone always ready for trouble. Dark hair, too long for fashion, fell across his forehead as he looked up at their approach. His face was weathered but striking, sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw shadowed with stubble, and eyes the color of winter sky. Those eyes narrowed as they took in the unexpected passenger beside his sister. "Mary?" His voice was deep, roughened by desert wind and disuse. "Who's this?" Mary's courage seemed to falter. "Elias, this is Miss Morgan. She's come a long way." "For what?" But even as he asked, Sadie saw understanding dawn in his eyes, followed quickly by anger. "Mary, tell me you didn't. You need a wife. Elias." "The hell I do." The profanity made Mary flinch, but Sadie had heard worse in Philadelphia's less savory establishments. "Send her back." "No." Sadie surprised herself with the firmness of her voice as she climbed down from the wagon unassisted. "I've traveled 2,000 miles. Mr. Boone, spent my last dollar on passage. I have nowhere to go back to." She met his gaze steadily. "The least you can do is offer me a meal and a night's shelter before you throw me out." Something flickered in those winter eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or a grudging respect. His gaze traveled over her, taking in the expensive dress now coated with trail dust, the city-soft hands, the defiant tilt of her chin. "You're not what I would have chosen," he said bluntly. "Well, you didn't choose me, did you?" Sadie shot back. "Your sister did, and perhaps she knows you better than you know yourself." Mary made a small sound, either distress or suppressed laughter. Elias's jaw tightened. "One night, there's a guest house out back. Mary will show you. Come morning, I'll arrange passage back east." "I told you, I have nowhere—" "That's not my problem. Miss Morgan." He turned on his heel and strode back toward the barn. Mary touched Sadie's arm gently. "Don't give up. He's not as hard as he seems." Looking at the rigid set of those broad shoulders, Sadie had her doubts. But what choice did she have? Behind her lay scandal and rejection. Ahead, who knew? But she'd rather face an uncertain future than return to a past that had no place for her. The guest house was small but clean, a single room with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the endless desert. As Sadie unpacked her few belongings, she caught sight of herself in the small mirror above the washstand. Mary was right. She looked nothing like the women of Canyon Ridge. Her dark hair, which she'd always worn in the latest fashion, seemed too elaborate. Her green eyes, which men in Philadelphia had written poetry about, appeared too knowing. Everything about her screamed outsider. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Mary entered carrying a tray with bread, cold beef, and water. "I'm sorry," the younger woman said quietly. I hoped he'd be more welcoming." "Why did you really write to me?" Sadie asked, accepting the simple meal gratefully. Mary sat on the edge of the bed, her breathing slightly labored. "Your advertisement. You didn't promise to be meek or obedient. You didn't list your household skills or your piety. You simply said you were looking for a new beginning. That's what Elias needs. Someone who understands that sometimes the past is too heavy to carry forever. And what past is your brother carrying? Mary's eyes grew distant. The war took his youth. A woman named Clara took his heart. And the land disputes that killed our mother took his faith in justice. He came here to escape all of it, but you can't outrun shadows. They follow wherever you go. Through the window, Sadie watched Elias working with a horse in the corral. His movements were patient, gentle even, at odds with the harsh man who'd wanted to send her away. There was something broken in the set of his shoulders, something that called to the broken places in her own spirit. "I'll try," she heard herself saying. "One night isn't much, but I'll try." Mary smiled, the expression transforming her plain features. That's all anyone can do. As darkness fell over the desert, Sadie lay in the narrow bed, listening to the unfamiliar sounds, coyotes howling in the distance, wind rattling the windows, the creak of the windmill, so different from Philadelphia's gaslit streets and society soirees. Tomorrow, Elias Boone would try to send her away, but Sadie Bell Morgan had not traveled 2,000 miles to be dismissed so easily. She'd lost everything: her family, her reputation, her place in society. But perhaps in losing everything, she'd found the freedom to become something new. The desert night stretched endlessly beyond her window, full of dangers and possibilities in equal measure. And somewhere in the main house, a man who thought he needed no one was about to discover that his sister might have been wiser than he knew. The rooster's crow pierced through Sadie's dreams, jarring her awake to unfamiliar surroundings. For a moment, she forgot where she was: the narrow bed, the adobe walls, the desert light filtering through muslin curtains. Then memory rushed back: Canyon Ridge, the Boone Ranch, Elias's cold dismissal. She rose and dressed quickly, choosing her plainest remaining dress, a brown wool that had seen better days but was still finer than anything the local women wore. Through her window, she could see Elias already at work, leading horses from the barn to the corral. The early morning sun caught the planes of his face, softening the harsh lines she'd seen yesterday. A knock at her door revealed Mary, looking even paler in the morning light. "Breakfast is ready, Miss Morgan. And Elias, he's agreed to let you stay a few more days. Until the next stage comes through. That's kind of him," Sadie said dryly. Mary's lips twitched. "I may have reminded him about Christian charity and mentioned that sending you away immediately would only fuel more gossip in town. Over breakfast, simple fare of biscuits, beans, and strong coffee." Sadie observed the Boone household. Elias ate in silence, his presence filling the room despite his lack of words. Mary picked at her food, occasionally pressing a handkerchief to her lips when a coughing fit took her. The house itself was clean but sparse, lacking any feminine touches save for a sampler on the wall that read, "God bless this home," in careful stitches. "I can work for my keep," Sadie announced, breaking the silence. "I'm not afraid of hard work." Elias looked up from his plate, those winter blue eyes skeptical. "You ever worked a ranch, Miss Morgan?" "No, but I've worked. Just because my hands aren't calloused doesn't mean they're idle." "What kind of work?" The question held an edge, as if he already suspected the answer wouldn't be to his liking. Sadie lifted her chin. "I kept books for a tea room. I sang for customers. I sewed garments for ladies who could afford to pay well for quality work." "You sang?" Mary's eyes lit up with interest. "She entertained men," Elias corrected flatly, "in establishments no decent woman would enter." Heat flooded Sadie's cheeks, but she held his gaze. "I sang songs, ballads and folk tunes. If men chose to listen, that was their business. I needed to eat. Mr. Boone. Not all of us have the luxury of choosing only respectable poverty. There's work enough here." Mary interjected quickly, sensing the brewing storm. "The vegetable garden needs tending, the chickens need feeding, and Lord knows this house could use a woman's touch." Elias pushed back from the table. "Do what you want, just stay out of my way." He grabbed his hat and strode out, letting the door bang shut behind him. Sadie spent the morning learning the rhythm of ranch life, Mary, despite her obvious weakness, showed her the garden, rows of struggling vegetables fighting against the desert heat. The chicken coop housed a dozen scraggly hens who eyed Sadie with deep suspicion. The kitchen garden held herbs that had mostly gone to seed. "I try," Mary said apologetically, pausing to catch her breath. "But lately, I just can't manage it all." "How long have you been ill?" Sadie asked gently. "Since last winter. The doctor in town says it's consumption. Elias wants to send me to a sanatorium in Colorado, but—" She gestured helplessly at the ranch. "Someone needs to look after him." Sadie knelt among the neglected herbs, her fine dress already dusty at the hem. "Show me what needs doing." They worked together through the morning, Mary instructing while Sadie did the heavy work. She learned which plants needed daily water and which would rot if given too much. She discovered that the red soil, while unforgiving, could yield life if treated with patience. At midday, with the sun beating down mercilessly, Sadie prepared lunch. Her cooking skills were limited. In Philadelphia, there had always been servants, but she managed a simple meal of cornbread and the perpetual beans. She carried a plate out to where Elias worked, repairing a section of fence. He looked up in surprise as she approached. Sweat had darkened his shirt, and dust clung to his skin. "What are you doing?" "Bringing you lunch. Mary says you often forget to eat. I manage fine on my own." "Clearly." She set the plate on a fence post. "Is stubbornness a requirement for ranching, or just a personal preference?" Despite himself, Elias's lips quirked. "Both, I reckon." He accepted the plate, his fingers brushing hers briefly. "Your hands are bleeding." Sadie looked down at her palms, marked with blisters from the unfamiliar work. "They'll toughen up." "Will they?" He studied her with those penetrating eyes. "What are you really doing here?" "Miss Morgan, women like you don't answer advertisements for frontier wives." "Women like me?" She bristled. "And what kind of woman am I?" "Beautiful, educated, used to finer things." He gestured at her dress, already showing wear from the morning's work. "You could have any man in Philadelphia. Why come here?" Sadie turned away, looking out over the vast expanse of desert. "Perhaps the men in Philadelphia didn't want what I had to offer, or wanted too much of what wasn't theirs to take." The silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken questions. "Finally," Elias said, "the territorial governor's hosting a dance in town tomorrow night. Mary insists on going, though she's not strong enough. Would you—" He cleared his throat. "Would you accompany her? Make sure she doesn't overdo? You won't be going." "I don't dance." The words were final, brooking no argument. That evening, as Sadie helped Mary prepare supper, she heard riders approaching. Through the window, she saw 3 men dismount near the corral where Elias worked. Their voices carried on the still air. "Heard you got yourself a woman. Boone!" One called out. "That pretty little thing from back east." "Mind your business. Carter," Elias replied evenly. "Just being neighborly. Thought we'd come welcome her proper-like." The man's tone suggested his intentions were anything but proper. Sadie started for the door, but Mary caught her arm. "Don't! Let Elias handle it." Through the window, they watched Elias straighten to his full height. "Miss Morgan is a guest in my home. You'll treat her with respect, or you'll answer to me. Mighty protective of a woman you're planning to send away," another man observed. "Maybe you won't mind if one of us tries our luck?" The crack of Elias's fist connecting with the man's jaw was audible even from the kitchen. The fellow went down hard, and his companions backed away as Elias stood over him. "Anyone else want to discuss Miss Morgan?" His voice was deadly quiet. The men collected their fallen friend and rode off, throwing dark looks over their shoulders. Elias returned to his work as if nothing had happened, but Sadie noticed he kept glancing toward the house, that night, unable to sleep. Sadie ventured out into the cool desert air. The stars overhead were brilliant, unmarred by city smoke and lights. She found herself drawn to the corral, where a beautiful paint mare stood watching her with liquid eyes. "Her name's Sage." Elias's voice came from the shadows, making her jump. "Mary's horse, though she can't ride anymore." She's beautiful. Sadie extended her hand, letting the mare sniff her fingers. You always wander around at night in your night clothes? There was something in his voice. Not censure exactly, but awareness. Sadie pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders. I couldn't sleep. The coyotes. You get used to them. He moved closer, and she could smell leather and sweat and something uniquely him. I owe you an apology. For earlier, those men, you defended me. You're under my protection while you're here. It's what any man would do. Not any man? She said quietly. Not where I come from. They stood in silence, watching the mare nuzzle at Sadie's hand. The moonlight silvered everything, making the harsh landscape almost beautiful. Why don't you dance? She asked suddenly. He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, haven't had reason to. Not for a long time. Your sister says you need to let people in. Mary says a lot of things, but his tone was gentle. She means well. She loves you. I know. The weight of that knowledge was heavy in his voice. That's why I need to take better care of her. Find her proper help. A sanatorium would kill her faster than the consumption. Sadie finished. She needs purpose. Mr. Boone. Need to feel useful. Taking that away. She thought of her own father, how he'd stripped her of everything that gave her life meaning. Sometimes the caring hurts worse than the illness. Elias turned to study her in the moonlight. You speak from experience. We all have our wounds. The next morning brought rain, a rare blessing in the desert. Sadie woke to the sound of it pattering on the roof and found Elias and Mary already on the porch, watching the storm sweep across the landscape. It's beautiful, Sadie breathed, joining them. It's life, Elias corrected. Without rain, nothing survives out here. As if to challenge his words, the rain intensified. Within an hour, what had been a blessing became a curse. Water poured through a weak spot in the guest house roof, soaking Sadie's few belongings. She salvaged what she could, carrying her damp possessions through the downpour to the main house. Elias met her at the door, his expression grim. Roof's been needing repair. I should have... He broke off, taking her sodden bundle. You'll have to stay in the house. Mary set her up in the small spare room, lending her a nightgown and helping her hang her wet things to dry. The proximity felt dangerous. Only a thin wall would separate her from Elias now. That evening, as the rain continued to fall, they gathered in the main room. Mary worked on her sewing while Sadie mended one of her water-damaged dresses. Elias sat by the fire, ostensibly reading, but Sadie felt his gaze on her. Tell us about Philadelphia, Mary requested. What was it like? Sadie considered her words carefully. Crowded, noisy, full of rules about what ladies could and couldn't do. Did you have suitors? Mary's question was innocent, but Sadie saw Elias stiffen. Some. She kept her eyes on her sewing. Men who thought a woman without family protection was fair game for any proposition. Is that why you left? Elias asked quietly. Sadie met his gaze across the room. I left because staying would have destroyed what little of myself I had left, because sometimes a clean break is the only way to heal. Thunder rolled across the desert, and Mary shivered. I think I'll retire early. After she left, the silence in the room grew heavy. Sadie continued her sewing, aware of every sound, the pop of the fire, the rain on the roof. Elias turning pages he probably wasn't reading. That man who hurt you, he said suddenly. Did he? He took my reputation. Sadie interrupted. My position, my future, but not, she swallowed hard, not what he wanted most. Good. The word was fierce. Though I'd have killed him if he had. The vehemence in his voice made her look up. You don't even know me. I know enough. He set aside his book, leaning forward. I know you're brave enough to travel across the country alone, strong enough to work until your hands bleed, proud enough to hold your head high when lesser folk try to shame you. Mr. Boone. Elias. His eyes held hers. If you're staying under my roof, You should call me Elias. The rain had softened to a gentle patter, and somewhere in the distance, a nightbird called. Sadie felt something shift between them, some wall beginning to crack. Elias, she said softly, testing the name. What happened to you? What made you build these walls so high? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with disuse and old pain. Tomorrow, he said. If you still want to know tomorrow, I'll tell you. It was a promise and a test. Tomorrow, the stage would come through. Tomorrow, she could leave if she chose, but sitting here in the lamplight, watching the shadows play across his weathered face, Sadie knew she wouldn't be on that stage. The desert had claimed her already, with its harsh beauty and unforgiving ways. Or perhaps it wasn't the desert at all, but the man who'd made his peace with loneliness rather than risk his heart again. Either way, she was staying. The town square had been transformed for the harvest festival. Paper lanterns hung from every available post and beam, casting warm pools of light against the gathering dusk. Tables groaned under the weight of pies, preserves, and other offerings from the local women. A makeshift dance floor had been laid out in front of the general store, and already couples were beginning to gather as fiddle music filled the air. Sadie smoothed her dress nervously, the emerald silk she'd worn on her arrival, cleaned and pressed to its former glory. Beside her, Mary clutched her arm, excitement bringing color to her pale cheeks. It's been so long since I've been to a proper dance, Mary confided. Elias usually refuses to attend. They'd left him back at the ranch, claiming he had too much work. But Sadie had seen the way he'd watched them leave. Something unreadable in those winter eyes. As they entered the square, conversations stuttered and stopped. Women in their simple calicos stared at Sadie's silk dress, their expressions ranging from envy to disapproval. Men tipped their hats, but their wives quickly steered them away. Pay them no mind, Mary whispered, though Sadie could feel her trembling. They found seats near the refreshment table, Mary gratefully sinking onto a bench. Her breathing was already labored from the short walk. Ladies, Mrs. Henderson, the banker's wife and self-appointed moral guardian of Canyon Ridge, approached with her coterie. Miss Boone, how unexpected to see you here, and with your brother's guest. The pause before guest was loaded with implication. Miss Morgan was kind enough to accompany me, Mary replied with quiet dignity. As you can see, I'm not strong enough to attend alone. How charitable. Mrs. Henderson's gaze raked over Sadie's appearance, though one wonders at the propriety of housing an unmarried woman, especially one of Miss Morgan's background. My background? Sadie kept her voice pleasant, though her spine stiffened. We've heard things, from the stage driver, about why a woman might flee Philadelphia so suddenly. Mrs. Henderson's smile was sharp as broken glass. Canyon Ridge has standards. Miss Morgan, we protect our own. How fortunate for Canyon Ridge. Sadie replied coolly, though I wonder if those standards include Christian charity and kindness to strangers. Mrs. Henderson's face reddened. Well, I never... No, Sadie agreed. I don't imagine you have... The woman huffed away, her followers trailing like ducklings. But the damage was done. Word spread through the gathering, and soon Sadie found herself in an invisible circle of isolation. Men who might have asked her to dance stayed away. Women turned their backs when she passed. I'm sorry, Mary said miserably. This is my fault. I should have known. Hush. Sadie squeezed her hand. I've weathered worse storms than provincial gossip. But as the evening wore on, the isolation began to wear on her. She watched couples whirl around the dance floor, remembered evenings in Philadelphia when she'd been sought after, admired. Before everything went wrong, mind if I have this dance? She looked up to find Tom Carter standing before her, one of the men Elias had confronted at the ranch. His smile held no warmth, only calculation. I'm keeping Miss Boone company. Sadie declined politely. Oh, go on, Mary urged. I'll be fine. Reluctantly, Sadie allowed Carter to lead her onto the floor. His hand at her waist felt possessive rather than polite, and he held her too close for propriety. "You're wasting your time with Boone," he said as they moved through the steps. "Man's got ice for blood, but there are others in Canyon Ridge who'd appreciate a woman like you." "Mr. Carter." "Tom." His hand tightened on hers. "I've got a spread nearly as big as Boone's. Could set you up real nice. Wouldn't even ask questions about Philadelphia." "How generous," Sadie said dryly, trying to maintain proper distance. "But I'm not looking for a protector." "Aren't you?" He spun her roughly, using the movement to pull her against him. "Woman traveling alone, no family, no references. Seems to me you need all the protection you can get." "The lady said she's not interested." The deep voice cut through the music, and suddenly Elias was there. He'd changed from his work clothes into a black suit that emphasized his broad shoulders and lean height. His freshly shaved jaw was set in hard lines. "Boone." Carter's smile turned mean. "Thought you didn't dance. I made an exception." Elias held out his hand to Sadie. "Miss Morgan." She took his hand gratefully, letting him lead her away from Carter. But instead of returning to the sidelines, Elias swept her into the next dance. His hand at her waist was firm but respectful, his lead confident despite his claims of not dancing. "You came," she said softly. "Mary gets overtired at these things." But his eyes never left hers. "Carter bothering you?" "Nothing I couldn't handle. I know." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "But you shouldn't have to handle it alone." They moved together as if they'd done this 100 times before. Around them. Sadie was aware of the stares, the whispers, but for the moment she didn't care. The lantern light cast shadows that hollowed Elias's cheeks and made his eyes seem even more intense. "You dance beautifully for someone who doesn't," she observed. "My mother taught me. Said a gentleman should know how to properly escort a lady." His expression darkened briefly. Haven't had cause to remember in years. "What made you remember tonight?" He was quiet for a moment, guiding her through a turn. "Couldn't stand the thought of other men's hands on you." The admission hung between them, charged with possibility. Sadie's breath caught as his thumb brushed against her waist, the touch burning through the silk of her dress. The music ended, but Elias didn't immediately release her. They stood frozen for a moment, oblivious to the crowd around them. "Then Mrs." Henderson's sharp voice cut through the spell. "Well, I declare, Elias Boone making a spectacle of himself over that. Careful, Mrs. Henderson." Elias's voice was deadly quiet as he turned to face her. "That's my future wife you're about to insult." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Sadie's eyes widened in shock, but Elias's hand at her back kept her steady. "Your wife, Mrs. Henderson sputtered. "If she'll have me." He looked down at Sadie, and she saw the truth in his eyes. This wasn't just for show. "Been meaning to ask proper-like, but I suppose now's as good a time as any." The crowd pressed closer, eager for scandal. Sadie's mind raced. She could refuse, maintain the fiction that she was merely a guest. Or, "Yes," she heard herself say. "Of course, yes." The crowd erupted in mixed reactions, some shocked, some delighted at the drama. But Sadie only had eyes for Elias, who was looking at her as if she'd just handed him salvation and damnation in equal measure. "We should go," he said quietly. "Mary needs to rest." They collected Mary, who was beaming despite her exhaustion. The ride home was silent except for the creak of wagon wheels and the distant howl of coyotes. Sadie sat between the siblings, hyper-aware of Elias's solid presence beside her. Back at the ranch, after seeing Mary to bed, Sadie found herself alone with Elias on the porch. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of sage and possibility. "Why?" she asked finally. He leaned against the porch rail, not looking at her. "You don't deserve their scorn. And He paused, seeming to wrestle with the words. "I'm tired of being alone. That's not a reason to marry someone, isn't it?" He turned to face her. "We're both running from something. Sadie, Maybe we could run together for a while. And if I want more than just companionship. Something flared in his eyes. Heat and hunger quickly banked. Then you'd be wanting something I'm not sure I can give. I had love once. It nearly destroyed me when I lost it. Tell me. She moved closer, close enough to see the pain etched in the lines around his eyes. Tell me what happened. He was quiet for so long she thought he'd refuse. Then, staring out into the darkness, he began to speak. Her name was Clara, Senator's daughter from Austin. We met before the war, when I still believed in things like justice and happily ever after. His voice was rough with memory. She promised to wait for me, wore my ring, wrote me letters full of plans for our future. Sadie waited, sensing the pain building behind his carefully controlled words. I came back different, seen too much death, done things. He shook his head. But I still had her, or so I thought. Found out she'd married another man 6 months after I left. Said her father pressured her, that she had no choice, but she'd been seeing him before I even shipped out. Elias. That wasn't the worst of it. His knuckles were white where he gripped the rail. The man she married. He was behind the land grab that killed my mother, legal papers saying our water rights belonged to him. When we fought it, hired guns came in the night. Mother was caught in the crossfire. Now Sadie understood the depth of his isolation. The walls built so high and thick. So you came here, she said softly. Brought Mary. Started over. Swore I'd never let anyone close enough to hurt me again. He looked at her then, and the rawness in his expression took her breath away. Then you showed up with your city dress and sharp tongue, bleeding from your own wounds but still fighting, and I knew I was in trouble. We don't have to, she started, but he cut her off. I meant what I said tonight. I'll marry you if you're willing. Give you protection, a home, respect. But don't expect... He struggled with the words. Don't expect me to love you. I don't think I have that left in me. Sadie studied his face in the moonlight, the proud lines softened by vulnerability, the strength undermined by old pain. She thought of her own wounds, the way trust had been shattered by betrayal. Maybe he was right. Maybe companionship and respect were enough. Maybe broken people could build something together, even if it wasn't whole. I accept your terms, she said quietly. But I have one condition. He raised an eyebrow. Waiting. Dance with me again, here, now, without the crowd watching. There's no music. Then we'll make our own. She held out her hand, and after a long moment, he took it. They moved together in the silence, just the whisper of wind and the creak of boards under their feet. His hand was warm at her waist, his breath stirring her hair. Sadie, he said, her name a question and a prayer. She looked up at him, seeing the war between desire and fear in his eyes, rising on her toes. She pressed her lips softly to his, a promise and a goodbye to who they'd been before. He stiffened for a moment, then his arm tightened around her, pulling her against him as he deepened the kiss. It was desperate and sweet and full of unspoken longings. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. I should go, he said roughly, but his hand lingered on her waist. Yes, she agreed, though every part of her wanted to stay in this moment. He stepped back, his expression unreadable in the darkness. We'll go to town tomorrow, see the preacher. So soon. No point in waiting. Unless, he paused, unless you've changed your mind. She thought of the women's cruel whispers, of Carter's grasping hands, of the long, lonely journey that had brought her here. Then she thought of Mary's quiet hope, of the way Elias had defended her, of the promise of building something new from the ashes of their pasts. No, she said firmly. I haven't changed my mind. He nodded once, then disappeared into the house, leaving her alone with the night and her racing thoughts. Tomorrow she would become Sadie Boone. Tomorrow she would bind herself to a man who claimed he couldn't love her. But tonight, under the vast desert sky, she allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, two broken hearts could heal each other, even if neither of them believed it yet. The simple wedding had been witnessed by Mary and old Samuel, the ranch hand, in the small chapel at the edge of town. Now, 3 weeks later, Sadie had settled into the rhythm of married life, though it was unlike any marriage she'd imagined in her girlhood dreams. They lived as polite strangers sharing a house. Elias had moved her belongings to the main house but kept his own room, maintaining careful boundaries. During the day, they worked side by side, she tending the house and garden while he managed the ranch. Evenings were spent in companionable silence, him reading while she sewed. They spoke of practical matters, the need for supplies, the health of the cattle, Mary's condition. But in the quiet moments, Sadie caught him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. And sometimes, when their hands accidentally touched passing a dish or tool, the air crackled with unspoken desire. Tonight was different. Mary had retired early after a particularly bad spell, leaving them alone by the fire. The autumn wind howled outside, rattling the windows and making the flames dance. "You're quiet tonight," Elias observed. Setting aside his book, Sadie kept her eyes on her mending. "Just thinking. About how strange this is." She set down the shirt she'd been repairing. "We're married, yet we know so little about each other." He leaned back in his chair, studying her. "What do you want to know?" "Everything." The word slipped out before she could stop it. "Your childhood, your dreams before the war. What makes you laugh?" She paused, gathering courage. "What you think about when you look at me the way you do." A muscle jumped in his jaw. Dangerous territory. Mrs. Boone. The formal address stung, but she pressed on. "Is it? We promised companionship. Isn't knowing each other part of that?" He was quiet for a long moment, then rose and moved to the window, staring out into the darkness. "I grew up on a ranch in Texas. My father died when I was 12, leaving me to run the place. Mother was strong. Had to be, but gentle too. She used to sing while she worked." His voice softened with memory. Church hymns mostly, but sometimes old Scottish ballads from her grandmother. Mary mentioned she died during a land dispute. His shoulders tensed. "Murdered. There's a difference." He turned to face her. "That's what you married into. Sadie, violence and loss. Still sure you want to know everything?" She rose and crossed to him, stopping just out of reach. "I married a man who protects those he cares about, who works from dawn to dusk to build something lasting, who dances beautifully when he allows himself to." She took a breath. "I'd like to know all of him, not just the parts he thinks are acceptable. And what about you?" His eyes held hers. "You've told me about the scandal, but not about the woman before it. Who was Sadie Morgan before Philadelphia society cast her out?" She moved to the fire, needing its warmth. "I was the youngest of 3 daughters, the rebellious one," my father said, while my sisters were content with needlework and social calls. "I wanted to read books, learn languages, understand how the world worked beyond our parlor, hence the singing in tea rooms. That came later. After Mother died and Father remarried, my stepmother believed a woman's only purpose was to marry well. When I refused her choice of suitors, a man 30 years my senior who'd buried 2 wives already, she convinced Father I was willful and needed discipline. So you found your own way to survive." The tea room owner was kind. He let me sing for tips, paid me to keep his books. "It was innocent work, but to society," she shrugged. "A lady didn't work, certainly not in public, where men could see her. And this married man who caused your downfall," her hands clenched in her lap. "Theodore Ashford, a patron at the tea room. He seemed kind at first, interested in my opinions, supportive of my independence. I was fool enough to believe he cared." She forced herself to continue. "He pursued me relentlessly. Gifts, letters, promises that he was leaving his wife. When I finally refused him definitively, he..." She paused, choosing her words. "He cornered me in the tea room's back office, said I owed him for all his attention. When I fought him off and fled, he told everyone I'd been pursuing him, threatening to expose their affair to his wife unless he paid me." Elias crossed to her in 2 strides, kneeling beside her chair. Sadie, his word against mine. A respected businessman versus a woman who sang for money. You can imagine who they believed. She met his eyes, surprised to find anger there, not at her, but for her. So yes, I fled. Answered advertisements for mail-order brides. Yours was the only response that didn't demand references or promises of docility. Mary's response, he corrected softly. But I'm grateful for her meddling now. His hand covered hers where it rested on her lap. The touch was meant to comfort, but it ignited something else entirely. They stayed frozen for a moment, awareness crackling between them. I should check on Mary, Sadie said breathlessly. Yes, he agreed, but neither moved. The fire crackled, casting dancing shadows. His thumb traced small circles on her wrist, and she felt that simple touch everywhere. Elias, she whispered. I know. His voice was rough. I promised companionship, nothing more, but God help me. Sadie, when you look at me like that, like what? Like you see something worth saving. She turned her hand palm up, interlacing their fingers. Maybe I do. He lifted their joined hands, pressing his lips to her knuckles. The gesture was tender, almost reverent, and it undid her more than any passionate embrace could have. A cough from the hallway shattered the moment. They sprang apart as Mary appeared, wrapped in a shawl, her face flushed with fever. I'm sorry, she wheezed. I couldn't catch my breath. Elias was beside her instantly, supporting her weight. Let's get you back to bed. Sadie heated water for the tea while Elias settled his sister. Mary's coughing had worsened over the past week, and the fever was new. When Elias returned to the kitchen, his face was grim. She needs the doctor. I'll ride to town at first light, Sadie offered. No. His tone was sharp. The roads aren't safe for a woman alone. Then we'll go together. Someone needs to stay with Mary. They stared at each other, the sweet tension of moments before replaced by fear for Mary's welfare. Samuel can stay with her, Sadie suggested. He knows what to do, and she trusts him. Elias nodded reluctantly. They spent the rest of the night taking turns sitting with Mary, cooling her fever and helping her sip water. By dawn, she was sleeping fitfully, her breathing labored but steady. The ride to town was tense. Elias pushed the horses hard, his jaw set in harsh lines. Sadie wanted to offer comfort but didn't know how. Their careful boundaries seemed more important than ever in the face of real crisis. Dr. Hutchins, a gruff man in his 60s, listened to their description with a frown. Sounds like the consumption's progressing. I'll come immediately. They made quick purchases of medicines and supplies, then headed back. As they loaded the wagon, Tom Carter emerged from the saloon despite the early hour. Well, the newlyweds. His smile was unpleasant. Heard you've been having trouble at the ranch. Boone, sick sister. Dried up well on the south pasture. Man stretches himself too thin. Things start falling apart. My affairs are none of your concern, Elias said coldly. Maybe not, but I'm looking to expand my holdings. If you ever need to sell, I don't. Carter's eyes shifted to Sadie. Pretty wife might have different ideas. Women like comfort, security, things a failing ranch can't provide. Mr. Carter. Sadie interjected sweetly. My husband's ranch could fail completely, and I'd still prefer a blanket under the stars with him to a mansion with you. Carter's face darkened. You might regret those words. Mrs. Boone, desert's a dangerous place. Accidents happen. Elias stepped forward, hand moving to his sidearm. Is that a threat? Just neighborly concern. Carter backed away, but his smile remained. You folks take care now. They rode home in silence, but Sadie noticed Elias kept checking the horizon, his hand never far from his rifle. Dr. Hutchins confirmed their fears. Mary's consumption had entered an advanced stage. He left medicines and instructions, but his expression was grave. She needs constant care, he told them privately. And prepare yourselves. These cases, sometimes they rally for a time, but he didn't need to finish. They understood. That evening, After Mary was settled with her medicines, Sadie found Elias in the barn, brushing the horses with methodical strokes. His shoulders were rigid with suppressed emotion. "She's all I have left," he said without turning. "I couldn't save my father, my mother. If I lose Mary, too—" Sadie moved behind him, placing her hand on his back. "You won't lose her. We won't let that happen." He spun around suddenly, dropping the brush. "We? There is no we. Sadie, that's not what we agreed to." The words stung, but she saw the fear behind them. "No, it's not what we agreed to, but it's what we have now, whether you admit it or not." "Don't!" His voice was ragged. "Don't make this more than it is." "Why not?" She stepped closer. "Because you might feel something? Because you might have to admit you care?" "Because caring destroys everything." The words exploded from him. "Everyone I've loved has been taken from me. I can't. Can't what? Can't love me?" She touched his face, feeling the tension in his jaw. "Too late, Elias. You already do." He caught her wrist, his grip almost painful. "You don't know what you're saying." "Don't I?" She met his tortured gaze steadily. "You think I don't see how you watch me when you think I won't notice? How you find excuses to touch me, helping me down from the wagon, passing dishes at dinner? You think I don't feel what's between us? Feeling and acting are different things." "Are they?" She pressed closer, felt his sharp intake of breath. "Then why are you shaking?" For a moment, she thought he'd push her away. Then his control shattered. His mouth crashed down on hers, hungry and desperate. She responded with equal fervor, pouring all her longing into the kiss. He backed her against the barn wall, his hands tangling in her hair. "Sadie," he groaned against her lips. "This isn't... We shouldn't... Stop thinking," she whispered. "Just feel." He kissed her again, deeper this time, and she melted against him. This was what she'd wanted since that first dance, this acknowledgement of the fire between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "This changes things. Everything's already changed." She traced his jaw with trembling fingers. "We just need to be brave enough to admit it." He captured her hand, pressing it to his chest where his heart raced. "I'm terrified," he admitted roughly. "Of losing you, of not being enough, of failing you like I failed everyone else. You haven't failed anyone, and you won't fail me." She pulled his head down for another kiss, gentle this time. "I'm not going anywhere. Elias Boone, you're stuck with me." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Promise. Promise." They stood there in the barn, holding each other as the sun set outside. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Mary's illness, Carter's threats, the endless demands of ranch life. But tonight, they had this, the acknowledgement of what had been growing between them all along. "We should go in," Elias said eventually. "Check on Mary." In a moment, Sadie rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "Just hold me a little longer." His arms tightened around her. "As long as you want." And standing there in the gathering darkness, surrounded by the quiet sounds of horses and the distant call of night birds, Sadie felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope. The November wind cut through Sadie's coat as she hurried from the general store to the wagon. She'd come to town for supplies and medicine for Mary, whose condition had stabilized but still required constant care. As she loaded her purchases, a familiar voice made her blood run cold. "Sadie? Sadie Morgan?" She turned slowly, her heart sinking as she faced Theodore Ashford. He looked exactly as she remembered, immaculately dressed, with cold gray eyes and a smile that never reached them. Beside him stood another man, younger and rougher, who watched her with unsettling interest. "It's Mrs. Boone now," she said steadily, though her hands trembled. "Is it?" Theodore stepped closer, and she smelled his cologne, the same scent that still haunted her nightmares. How fascinating! The little songbird found herself a protector after all. "My husband will be here any moment." "Will he?" Theodore glanced around the empty street. Most folks were inside, escaping the bitter wind. I think not. I've been watching. You see, learning about your new life. Your husband's at the stockyards today. Won't be back for hours. Fear crawled up her spine, but she kept her voice level. What do you want? What's mine? His eyes traveled over her with proprietary interest. You caused me considerable embarrassment in Philadelphia. My dear, my wife left me, took half my fortune. My reputation was damaged, all because you couldn't accept your place. My place was never beneath you, she said sharply. His face darkened. Such spirit. I always did admire that about you. It will make breaking you so much more satisfying. If you touch me. Touch you? He laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Oh, my dear, I have much more elegant plans. You see, I've been corresponding with some associates in the territorial government. Amazing what a little money can reveal. For instance, your husband's ranch sits on quite valuable land. Silver deposits, they say, and with the railroad coming through. Get to the point. The point is leverage. I've acquired the notes on your husband's loans. One word from me, and I can call them due immediately. Unless, of course, you're willing to negotiate. Sadie's mind raced. Elias had mentioned loans taken to improve the ranch, but she hadn't realized they were vulnerable to such manipulation. What kind of negotiation? Theodore smiled. Return with me to Philadelphia, quietly. Tell your husband the marriage was a mistake. I'll ensure the ranch remains safe, and I'll even provide for his sick sister. You're insane. Am I? Think carefully. Sadie, your husband loses his ranch, his sister loses her home while ill, all because you were too proud to accept reality. He pulled out a document. I have papers here. Sign them, and this all goes away. Sadie stared at the papers, a statement declaring her marriage invalid and transferring power of attorney to Theodore. Her signature would destroy everything she'd built here. I need time to think. You have until tomorrow night. I'm staying at the hotel. He leaned closer, and she forced herself not to recoil. Don't test me, Sadie. You've seen what I can do to those who cross me. After he left, Sadie drove home in a daze. How could she tell Elias? They'd grown so close these past weeks, sharing more than just kisses in the barn. He'd begun opening up, showing her the man beneath the protective walls, and now Theodore threatened to destroy it all. She found Elias already home, tending to Mary, whose fever had returned. His face lit up when he saw her, then immediately creased with concern. What's wrong? Nothing, just tired. The lie tasted bitter. How's Mary? Not good. Doc Hutchins came by. He thinks... Elias's voice broke slightly. He thinks we should make her comfortable. Sadie took his hand. She's a fighter, like her brother. That night, as they took turns sitting with Mary, Sadie wrestled with her conscience. She could leave, save the ranch, ensure Mary had care. But it would destroy Elias. He'd see it as another betrayal, another abandonment. It would confirm every fear that kept him from fully opening his heart. Near dawn, Mary's breathing grew labored. She clutched Sadie's hand with surprising strength. Take care of him, she whispered. He needs you more than he knows. Mary, don't talk like that. I see how he looks at you, like Mother used to look at Father. Don't let him lose that. Tears burned Sadie's eyes. I won't, I promise. Mary smiled weakly. Good. You're the sister I always wanted. When Elias took over the watch, Sadie walked out into the pre-dawn darkness. The desert stretched endlessly, offering no answers to her dilemma. She thought of Theodore's threats, of the papers waiting in town, of the power he held over their lives. Then she thought of Elias's rare smiles, of Mary's trust, of the home they'd built together. The choice crystallized with sudden clarity. She wouldn't run. Not this time. When the sun rose, she found Elias in the kitchen, making coffee with shaking hands. I need to tell you something, she said. He looked up, exhaustion lining his face. If it's bad news, can it wait? I don't think I can handle more right now. She crossed to him, framing his face with her hands. It's about Theodore Ashford. He's here. Elias went rigid. The man from Philadelphia, She told him everything. Theodore's threats, the loans, the ultimatum. With each word, Elias' expression grew darker. "I'll kill him," he said flatly. "No." She gripped his arms. "That's what he wants, an excuse to destroy you completely." "Then what do you suggest? Let him take you?" "Never." She took a breath. "But we need to be smart. Check the loans. See what leverage he really has. And—" She hesitated. "There might be something in my past we can use against him." "What do you mean?" "In Philadelphia, there were rumors about his business dealings. Shady contracts, bribed officials. If we could find proof." "That's dangerous territory, Sadie." "So is doing nothing." They were interrupted by Samuel calling urgently from Mary's room. They rushed in to find her struggling to breathe, her lips tinged blue. The next hours passed in a blur. Doc Hutchins arrived but could do little except ease her pain with laudanum. As the sun reached its zenith, Mary Boone breathed her last, her hand clasped between her brothers and sister-in-laws. Elias broke then, collapsing beside the bed with a sound like a wounded animal. Sadie held him as he wept, her own tears falling silently. In their shared grief, all barriers crumbled. They clung to each other like survivors of a shipwreck. "Don't leave me," he said brokenly against her shoulder. "I can't lose you too." "Never," she promised fiercely. "Whatever happens with Theodore, we face it together." They buried Mary the next day in the small cemetery behind the ranch, beside the marker for Elias's mother. The entire town turned out, even those who'd shunned Sadie. Death had a way of softening judgment. As the mourners departed, Tom Carter approached. "Sorry for your loss. Boone, if you need help with anything—" "Thank you," Elias said stiffly. Carter's eyes shifted to Sadie. "Heard you had a visitor in town yesterday? Man from back east." Sadie kept her expression neutral. "News travels fast." "It does. Man's been asking questions about your ranch. Boone, about mineral rights and such." Carter's smile was sly. "Might be I could help with that." "For a price. We don't need your help." Elias said, "Maybe not, but that fellow's got powerful friends. And from what I hear, he's got a particular interest in your wife." After Carter left, Elias turned to Sadie. "We can't wait. Theodore will use Mary's death. Say I'm vulnerable. Then we act first." Sadie squared her shoulders. "I'll meet with him, pretend to agree to his terms. Maybe I can get him to reveal something we can use." "Absolutely not." "Elias? No." He gripped her shoulders. "I just put my sister in the ground. I won't risk you too. You won't be risking me. I know Theodore. He's arrogant. Likes to boast when he thinks he's won. If I can get him talking. And if he decides to take what he wants by force, he won't. Not in public. His new reputation matters too much." She touched his face. "Trust me, please." That evening, Sadie entered the hotel dining room where Theodore waited. He'd chosen a prominent table, clearly wanting witnesses to their meeting. She dressed carefully, modest but elegant, every inch the proper wife. "Sadie." He rose, pulling out her chair with a mocking courtesy. "You look lovely. Marriage agrees with you. State your terms plainly." She said, "My husband just lost his sister. I won't leave him to grieve alone for long." "How touching. Very well. You sign the papers. Leave with me tonight. I'll ensure your husband keeps his ranch and receives a fair price for the mineral rights. And if I refuse, then by next week, he'll lose everything. I'll make sure of it." He leaned forward. "You know I keep my promises. Sadie, good and bad." She pretended to consider, letting her shoulders slump in defeat. "You've left me no choice." "None at all." His satisfaction was evident. "But don't look so glum. I'll treat you well, better than some frontier rancher could. You'll have beautiful clothes, a fine house, everything you deserve. Everything except freedom. Freedom is an illusion. My dear, there's only power and those too weak to grasp it. Is that what you told your wife before she left you?" His face darkened. "Careful. I'm curious. How did you explain my supposed pursuit of you when everyone knew you shower attention on every pretty girl who worked in that district?" No one questioned a man of my standing. No one. Not even William Prescott, whose daughter you compromised last year, or Judge Morrison, whose wife received some very interesting letters. Theodore went still. You're fishing, am I? She pulled out a folded paper. Telegram from a friend in Philadelphia. Amazing what servants overhear and remember, especially when their wages are months overdue because their employer's accounts are frozen pending investigation. You're lying. Perhaps. Or perhaps your creditors are very interested to know your current location. Hotel dining rooms have many ears. Theodore, how many people here might be willing to send word east for a finder's fee? His urbane mask slipped, revealing the cruel man beneath. You little... Choose your words carefully. Elias's voice came from behind her. He stood with the sheriff and 2 deputies. These gentlemen are very interested in Mr. Ashford's business here. Sheriff Cray. Theodore recovered his composure. This is a private matter? Not anymore. The sheriff, a lean man with sharp eyes, stepped forward. Got some interesting telegrams this afternoon. Seems there are warrants for your arrest in Pennsylvania. Fraud, embezzlement, breach of promise to several young ladies. This is ridiculous. I'm a respected businessman. Were. Sadie stood, facing him squarely. Your wife didn't just leave you. Theodore. She exposed you. Every dirty deal, every bribe, every threat. She sent evidence to the authorities before she sailed for Europe. You arranged this. His eyes blazed with fury. You and your savage husband. No, you arranged it yourself the day you decided to follow me here. She leaned closer, her voice low. I was prepared to disappear, to let you live your lies. But you couldn't let me go. Your pride demanded you punish me for refusing you. And now that pride has destroyed you. The sheriff nodded to his deputies, who moved to flank Theodore. Mr. Ashford, you'll need to come with us. As they led him away, he turned back to Sadie. This isn't over. Yes, she said firmly. It is. The dining room erupted in whispers as Elias drew her into his arms, not caring about propriety or witnesses. How did you manage the telegrams? She asked against his chest. Mary's friend from school married a Pinkerton agent. He was very helpful once I explained the situation. He pulled back to look at her. You took a terrible risk. No more than you take every day, fighting to keep this ranch, this life we've built. She touched his face. We're partners, remember? In everything. He kissed her then, right there in the hotel dining room, deep and passionate and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, the whispers had turned to scattered applause. Take your wife home, Boone, someone called, before she causes more excitement, as they rode home under the stars. Elias reached for her hand. I love you, Sadie Boone, completely, desperately, eternally. Even though I'm too wild for a proper ranch wife. Especially because of that. He brought her hand to his lips. You saved us today. Saved the ranch. Saved me from doing something stupid. We saved each other, she corrected. That's what love does. They rode in comfortable silence until the ranch came into view. It looked different somehow. Not just a refuge from their pasts, but a foundation for their future. Mary would have been proud, Elias said softly. She knew, Sadie replied. She knew we'd fight for each other, for this place, for the life she wanted us to have. As they dismounted, Elias caught her around the waist, spinning her in a circle that made her laugh despite the sorrow of recent days. What are you doing? Celebrating. He set her down but kept her close. My wife is brilliant, brave, and beautiful. And she loves me despite my stubborn nature. Because of your stubborn nature, she corrected. Though you could work on the communication part. I'll work on anything you want, as long as you stay. Forever, she promised, sealing it with a kiss. The desert wind sang around them, carrying away the last shadows of their pasts. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, running the ranch without Mary, dealing with the aftermath of Theodore's arrest, building their life together. But tonight, They had each other, and that was enough. That was everything. Spring came gently to the desert, painting the harsh landscape with unexpected beauty. Wildflowers bloomed among the sage, and the morning air carried sweetness instead of dust. Sadie stood on the porch, one hand resting on her growing belly, watching Elias work with a new colt in the corral. 3 months had passed since Theodore's arrest and Mary's death. The ranch had found its rhythm again, though her absence was felt daily. Elias had thrown himself into work, expanding the herd and improving the property with an energy that spoke of building for the future rather than merely surviving. "You shouldn't be on your feet so long," Doc Hutchins said, joining her on the porch. He'd come for her monthly check, insisting on monitoring her pregnancy carefully given the harsh conditions. "I'm fine," Sadie assured him. "Stronger than I look." "That you are." The doctor's eyes crinkled. "Never thought I'd see Elias Boone smile again, but you've worked miracles," as if hearing his name. Elias looked up from the corral, his face softening when he saw her. He'd changed these past months. The harsh lines around his eyes had gentled, and he laughed more readily. Love had transformed them both. "Everything looks good," Doc Hutchins pronounced after his examination. "Baby's growing well. Should arrive late summer, I'd say." After he left, Sadie found Elias in the kitchen, washing the trail dust from his face and hands. "What did Doc say?" he asked, trying for casual but failing. "That I'm healthy as one of your horses and twice as stubborn." Relief flooded his features. He crossed to her, placing gentle hands on her belly. "Good. Can't have anything happening to either of you." "Nothing will." She covered his hands with hers. "We're tougher than we look. Your child and I—" "My child." Wonder filled his voice, as it did every time. "Never thought I'd say those words." A rider approaching cut short their moment. Elias stepped onto the porch, hand near his gun out of habit, but the rider was Sam Morrison, who owned the neighboring ranch. "Afternoon. Boone. Mrs. Boone." He tipped his hat. "Afraid I've got troubling news. Tom Carter's been stirring up something fierce. Says now that Theodore fellow's gone, he's making his move for your water rights." Elias's jaw tightened. "On what grounds?" "Claims there was some irregularity in the original filing. He's got a lawyer from Santa Fe backing him up. They're calling a town meeting tonight." After Morrison left, Elias slammed his fist against the porch rail. "Carter's been waiting for this. Thinks with Mary gone and you pregnant, I'm vulnerable. Then he doesn't know us very well." Sadie straightened her shoulders. "We'll go to that meeting and fight. You're not going anywhere near Elias Boone." Her voice carried the steel she'd found in these frontier months. "I am your wife, not some fragile flower. We face this together, as we've faced everything else." That evening, the town hall overflowed with ranchers, merchants, and townspeople. Tom Carter stood at the front with a oily-looking man in a city suit. They'd spread documents across a table, making a show of legal authority. "The facts are simple," the lawyer, introduced as Mr. Hartley, announced. "The original water rights claim filed by the late Mrs. Boone contains errors. The boundary descriptions don't match the territorial survey. This invalidates the claim. Those boundaries were set by government surveyors." Elias countered. "Any errors are theirs, not ours. Nevertheless, the law is clear. Invalid filings must be refiled. And Mr. Carter here has already submitted proper documentation." "You mean he's trying to steal what 3 generations of Boones have built?" Someone called out. Carter stood, his smile predatory. "I'm following the law. If Boone can't protect his interests, that's not my fault. And I suppose the fact that silver was found near that water source has nothing to do with your sudden concern for legal precision?" Sadie's clear voice cut through the murmur. "Mrs. Boone." Carter's eyes glittered dangerously. "Ladies don't usually involve themselves in business matters. This lady does." She moved forward, Elias close beside her. "Especially when that business threatens her family's future. Emotional appeals won't change the law." Hartley interjected. "No, but this might." A new voice spoke from the back. Everyone turned as Judge William Thornton entered, carrying a leather portfolio. The circuit judge commanded respect throughout the territory. "Judge Thornton," Carter stammered, "we weren't expecting you for another month." "I was in the area. Heard there was a dispute needing attention." The judge's sharp eyes surveyed the room. "Mr. Hartley, I'm familiar with your work in Santa Fe, mostly representing mining interests. If I recall, curious that you're suddenly concerned with water rights. My client's interests are varied. Your client's interests are transparent." The judge opened his portfolio. "I have here the original survey maps, the water rights filing, and interestingly, a telegram from the territorial governor expressing concern about potential fraud in this matter." Carter's face reddened. "There's no fraud here." "No? Then perhaps you can explain why you've been buying up land around known silver deposits for the past year, using various false names." The judge produced more documents. "Or why Mr. Hartley here has been disbarred in 2 states for falsifying legal documents." The crowd erupted in angry voices. Hartley tried to slip toward the door, but found his way blocked by several ranchers. "Furthermore," Judge Thornton continued, "I have sworn statements from surveyors confirming the Boone water rights are properly filed and legal. Any attempt to invalidate them constitutes fraud and attempted theft." "You can't prove," Carter started. "I can and will. Sheriff Cray, I believe you have work to do." As the sheriff moved toward Carter and Hartley, Carter's desperation boiled over. "This is all her fault." He pointed at Sadie. "Ever since that woman came here, bringing her city ways and scandal. She's bewitched Boone, turned this town against proper order." "The only disorder here is your greed," Elias said coldly. "And if you speak of my wife that way again, you'll answer to me." "Your wife?" Carter laughed bitterly. "You have no idea what she really is. What she did in Philadelphia. The men she—" The crack of Sadie's palm against Carter's face echoed through the hall. He staggered back, hand to his cheek, shock replacing rage. "I was young and alone and made mistakes," Sadie said clearly, addressing the entire room. "I trusted the wrong people and nearly paid dearly for it, but I came here for a new beginning, and I found more than that. I found a home, a husband who sees my worth beyond my past, and a community that judges people by their actions, not gossip." She turned to the crowd, many of whom had shunned her initially. "You all know me now. You've seen me work beside my husband, mourn his sister, fight for our ranch. If Mr. Carter thinks my past invalidates my present, then he understands nothing about the frontier spirit that built this town." The silence that followed was profound. Then Mrs. Henderson, the same woman who'd led the gossip against her, stepped forward. "I owe you an apology. Mrs. Boone, you've proven yourself 10 times over, and anyone who tries to use a woman's past troubles against her good name is no gentleman in my book." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Other women nodded, some stepping forward to stand with Sadie. Judge Thornton gavelled for order. "Mr. Carter, Mr. Hartley, you're under arrest for fraud and conspiracy. The Boone water rights stand is filed. This matter is closed." As the sheriff led the protesting men away, the townspeople surrounded Elias and Sadie, offering congratulations and support. The transformation was remarkable, from suspicion to acceptance, earned through courage and perseverance. Later, riding home under the stars, Elias pulled the wagon to a stop. "What you did tonight, standing up to him, to everyone, I learned from the best," Sadie said softly. "From a man who fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself." He drew her close, mindful of her condition. "You're remarkable. You know that?" "We're remarkable," she corrected. "Together." They were about to continue when riders approached fast from behind. Elias tensed, reaching for his rifle, but relaxed as Samuel and several ranch hands came into view. "Boss," Samuel called. "Trouble at the ranch. Fire in the south pasture, near the creek. Looks like Carter's men set it before the sheriff got them all." They raced home to find orange flames licking at the dry grass, threatening to spread to the buildings. The next hours were a blur of bucket brigades, beating at flames with wet blankets, creating fire breaks. Sadie worked alongside the men despite Elias's protests, carrying water and supplies. The fire was contained just as dawn broke, leaving a blackened scar across the land, but sparing the structures and most of the grazing area. Exhausted and soot-covered, they gathered in the yard. "Could have been worse," Samuel observed. "If the wind had shifted." But it didn't. Elias's voice was firm. "We stopped it, together." As the hands dispersed to rest, Elias found Sadie sitting on the porch steps, fatigue lining her face. Fear clutched his heart. "The baby is fine," she assured him. "Doc Hutchins already checked. We Boones are made of stern stuff. We Boones." He sat beside her, pulling her close. I like the sound of that. They sat watching the sun rise over their land, scarred but unbroken. Like them. The challenges would keep coming. There would always be those who coveted what they'd built, who saw their happiness as a threat. But they'd face down scandal, death, fraud, and now fire. "What are you thinking?" Sadie asked. That Mary was right. I did need you, more than I could have imagined. She was wise. Your sister saw what we were too stubborn to see, that we belonged together, that we were already together. We just needed to stop fighting it." He kissed her temple, tasting smoke and sweat and courage. No more fighting, only building. Building what? A legacy. For this little one. He touched her belly gently. For the children to come. For the town that's finally accepted us. We'll make this ranch something special. Sadie, something that lasts. She turned in his arms, seeing the vision in his eyes. Not just survival, but prosperity. Not just acceptance, but belonging. "We already have," she said. "We've built something Carter and his kind can never understand or destroy. We've built a love strong enough to weather any storm." As if in response to her words, the morning breeze shifted, carrying away the last of the smoke. The land would heal. Grass would grow again over the burned places. And their child would be born into a world made safer by their courage and determination. "I love you, Sadie Boone," Elias murmured. "My wild, brave, beautiful wife. And I love you, Elias Boone, my stubborn, protective, wonderful husband." They rose together, hand in hand, to face the new day. There was work to be done, fences to repair, justice to oversee, a future to build. But for now, they had this moment of peace, earned through trial and triumph. The wild mail-order bride and the bitter rancher had found in each other not just love, but redemption. And in the harsh beauty of the desert, they'd created something neither had dared dream of, a home. The drought came in July, turning the desert even more unforgiving than usual. The creek ran low, the grass withered, and the cattle grew thin. It was the worst dry spell in a decade, old-timers said, and it couldn't have come at a worse time. Sadie, now heavily pregnant, watched from the porch as Elias and the hands drove the cattle to what little water remained. He'd been gone since dawn, searching for new grazing land, negotiating with neighboring ranchers for water access. The stress showed in the tight set of his shoulders, the deepening lines around his eyes. "Mrs. Boone?" Samuel approached, hat in hand. "Got a telegram from town, from Mr. Elias." Sadie's heart jumped as she read the brief message. "Found cellar in Albuquerque. Good stock, drought-resistant. Must leave immediately. Trust you with everything. All my love. E." She understood. With their herd weakening, they needed fresh bloodlines, cattle bred for harsh conditions. But the timing terrified her. The baby could come any day, and Elias would be gone at least 2 weeks. "Samuel," she said, keeping her voice steady, "we'll need to organize water rotations for the remaining cattle, and someone should ride to town daily in case..." Already arranged. "Ma'am, Doc Hutchins says he'll stay in town until Mr. Elias returns, and the Morrison women offered to take turns checking on you." That evening, as Sadie prepared for bed, she heard horses approaching. Through the window, she saw a lone rider dismounting, a woman in traveling clothes, her face obscured by dust and twilight. Sadie opened the door cautiously. One hand on the rifle, Elias insisted she keep close. "Sadie!" The woman's voice was cultured, familiar. "It's me, Clara." The name hit like a physical blow. Clara, Elias's lost love, the woman who'd broken his heart and driven him to this isolation. She stood there, still beautiful despite the travel wear, her pale blue eyes uncertain. "What are you doing here?" Sadie managed. I heard about Elias, that he'd married. I had to see." Clara swayed, exhaustion evident. "Please, I've ridden for 3 days." Against her better judgment. Sadie stepped aside. "Come in." She settled Clara at the kitchen table with water and simple food. Studying the woman who'd haunted Elias's past, Clara was everything Sadie wasn't, delicate, refined, with the porcelain beauty that graced society portraits. "He's not here," Sadie said finally. "Business in Albuquerque." "I know. I waited until he left." Clara's laugh was bitter. "I'm still a coward. You see, couldn't face him directly." "Then why come at all?" Clara's composure cracked. "Because I've destroyed my life, and I needed to know he was all right, that he'd found happiness despite what I did." "He has." Sadie's hand moved protectively to her belly. "We both have." Clara's eyes followed the gesture. "You're carrying his child. He always wanted children." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I threw it all away. His love, our future, everything. For what? A rich husband who despises me? A place in society that feels like a prison? Why are you telling me this? Because I need someone to understand. My husband, the one I left Elias for, he's dead, shot by a business rival. I'm free now, but it's too late. I see that." She leaned forward urgently. "But I could help. Financially, I inherited everything. I could pay off any debts. Help with the drought?" "Stop!" Sadie's voice was sharp. "Do you think you can buy redemption? Purchase forgiveness? I don't know what I think anymore." Clara buried her face in her hands. "I just know I've been traveling for weeks, running from the emptiness. When I heard Elias had married, I don't know what I thought." Sadie studied the broken woman before her. It would be easy to hate Clara, to throw her past betrayal in her face. But looking at her now, Sadie saw only another woman wounded by poor choices and societal pressures. "You can stay the night," she said quietly. "But you'll be gone before Elias returns." "Thank you." Clara's gratitude was pathetic. "You're kinder than I deserve." That night, as they prepared the guest room, the same one Sadie had stayed in when she first arrived, Clara asked, "Does he ever speak of me?" "Once, to explain why he'd built walls around his heart. And you broke through them?" "We broke through together. That's what real love does. It heals rather than wounds." Clara nodded slowly. "I wounded him terribly. His letters from the war, they were full of plans for our future. And I was already being courted by Harold, already making excuses." A sudden pain gripped Sadie's middle, making her gasp. Clara was beside her instantly. "The baby? I don't know. It's too early." Another pain, stronger. "Something's wrong." Clara took charge with surprising efficiency. "Where's the nearest help?" "Samuel in the bunkhouse. The doctor in town." "I'll get both." Clara helped Sadie to bed. "I may have failed at everything else, but I helped deliver my sister's children. You're not alone." The next hours blurred together. Samuel rode hard for town while Clara stayed with Sadie, coaching her through increasing pains. Dawn was breaking when Doc Hutchins arrived, taking in the scene with professional calm. "Baby's coming early," he confirmed. "Probably the stress and heat. Clara, I'll need your help." They worked together through the morning, Clara proving surprisingly competent. She held Sadie's hand, wiped her brow, offered encouragement when the pain seemed unbearable. "I can't do this without Elias," Sadie gasped between contractions. "Yes, you can." Clara's voice was firm. "You're the strongest woman I've ever met. You crossed a continent alone, faced down scandal, saved a ranch. You can bring this baby into the world." As the sun reached its zenith, A thin cry filled the room. Doc Hutchins held up a tiny but perfect daughter. "Small but healthy," he pronounced, placing the baby in Sadie's arms. "Got her mother's fighting spirit." Sadie stared down at the miracle in her arms. Dark hair like Elias, but her own green eyes already peeking through. "Mary," she whispered. "Her name is Mary." Clara stood back, tears streaming. "She's beautiful. Elias will be—" She broke off. "I should go. Clara, wait." Sadie caught her hand. "Thank you. I did nothing. You stayed. You helped. That's everything." Sadie studied the other woman's face. "What will you do now?" "I don't know. Travel, perhaps. Try to find meaning somewhere." Clara touched the baby's tiny fist gently. "Take care of them. Both of them. They deserve the happiness I couldn't give." She was gone within the hour, leaving only a note and a bank draft. The note was brief. "For the baby's future. Please don't let him refuse it out of pride. Consider it justice for an old wrong. See." The bank draft was substantial enough to see them through 10 droughts. Sadie was dozing with the baby when thundering hooves announced a rider approaching fast. Through the window, she saw Elias dismount before his horse had fully stopped, racing for the house. "Sadie!" He burst through the door, wild-eyed. "Samuel found me on the road. The baby. Come meet your daughter," she said softly. He approached the bed like a man in a dream, staring down at the tiny bundle. With trembling hands, he touched the baby's cheek. "A daughter," he breathed. "She's perfect. Mary," Sadie told him. "For your sister." Tears ran unchecked down his weathered face. "Mary, yes." He kissed Sadie's forehead. "Are you all right? I should have been here. I never should have left." "Hush. We're both fine. And you did what you had to for the ranch." She paused, knowing she had to tell him. "Elias, Clara was here." He went very still. "What?" She told him everything. Clara's arrival, her help during the birth, her departure. She showed him the bank draft. He stared at it for a long moment, emotions warring on his face. "I don't want her money." "It's not for you. It's for Mary, for her future." Sadie touched his face. "Clara's gone. Elias, she's not coming back. She just needed to know you were happy." "Am I?" He looked from his daughter to his wife. "I have everything I never dared dream of. A woman who loves me despite my flaws. A daughter to carry on our legacy. A home built on truth rather than pretense. If that's not happiness, I don't know what is." He settled beside them on the bed, one arm around Sadie, one finger trapped in his daughter's tiny grip. "The cattle?" Sadie asked. "Will arrive in a few days. Hardy stock from a rancher who survived worse droughts than this. We'll make it through. We always do." They sat quietly, listening to their daughter's soft breathing. Outside, clouds gathered on the horizon, the first hint of the monsoon season that would break the drought. "I'm sorry I wasn't here," Elias said again. "You're here now. That's what matters." Sadie leaned into his strength. "Though you missed quite a drama. Clara turned out to be an excellent midwife. The world's full of surprises." He kissed her temple. "Like a mail-order bride who became my salvation. Like a bitter rancher who became my home." Little Mary stirred, opening green eyes that seemed to see straight into her father's soul. Elias made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "She's going to be trouble," he predicted. "I can see it already. Like her mother? Exactly like her mother. And I wouldn't have it any other way." As if in response to their joy, the first drops of rain began to fall. Within minutes, it became a downpour, the drought-breaking storm they'd prayed for. They moved to the window, watching the dry earth drink deeply. "It's a sign," Elias murmured. "New life, new hope, new beginnings." Sadie agreed. They stood together, their daughter safe between them, watching the desert bloom in the rain. The journey that had begun with a desperate advertisement and a reluctant meeting had led them here, to love, family, and a future bright with promise. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. The ranch still struggled, the town still gossiped, And raising a child in the frontier would test them in new ways. But they'd weathered betrayal and drought, scandal and fire. Together, they could face anything. "I love you, Sadie Boone," Elias whispered. "Thank you for not giving up on me." "Never," she promised, sealing it with a kiss while baby Mary dozed. Safe in the circle of their love, the rain continued to fall, washing the world clean and new. 5 years had passed since that drought-breaking storm. The Boone Ranch had prospered, becoming one of the most successful in the territory. The silver deposits Tom Carter had coveted proved modest but steady, providing income that Elias invested back into the land and cattle. The ranch now employed a dozen hands and their families, creating a small community bound by loyalty and shared purpose. Little Mary, now 5, raced across the yard on sturdy legs, her dark braids flying. She had her father's determined jaw and her mother's sparkling green eyes, along with a spirit that kept both parents on constant alert. "Mary Elizabeth Boone," Sadie called from the porch. "You get back here and put on your shoes." "But Mama, the ground feels better bare." "Just like her mother," Elias commented. Emerging from the barn, despite the passing years, he still moved with that controlled grace, though silver now threaded his dark hair, wild and free. Sadie smiled, one hand resting on her belly where their second child grew. And just like her father, stubborn as a mule. The sound of approaching wagons drew their attention. A small caravan wound its way toward the ranch, and Sadie recognized Mrs. Henderson at the lead, accompanied by several other women from town. "The quilting circle," Sadie murmured. "I'd forgotten they were coming today." It still amazed her sometimes, how completely the town had embraced her. The woman once shunned as scandalous was now a pillar of the community, organizing charitable drives and teaching young women to read and write. "Ladies," she greeted them warmly. "Welcome to our home." Mrs. Henderson, now one of Sadie's closest allies, embraced her. "How are you feeling, dear? This heat can't be easy in your condition." "I'm well. Please, come inside. I've prepared refreshments." As the women settled in the main room with their quilting supplies, their conversation flowed easily. They were making blankets for the new school being built in town, a project Sadie had spearheaded using part of Clara's gift. "I still can't believe we're finally getting a proper school," young Mrs. Morrison said. "And with Miss Fletcher coming all the way from Denver to teach." "Education changes everything," Sadie replied, her needle moving steadily. "Every child deserves the chance to learn, regardless of their family's circumstances." Spoken like someone who knows the value of second chances. "Mrs. Henderson observed kindly. Through the window, Sadie watched Elias teaching Mary to rope a fence post. Their daughter's fierce concentration mirrored his own. And when she finally succeeded, Elias swept her up in a proud embrace that made Sadie's heart swell. "You're blessed, Mrs. Morrison said, following her gaze. "Not all mail-order marriages turn out so well. We were both broken when we found each other," Sadie admitted. "But sometimes broken pieces fit together better than perfect ones ever could." The afternoon passed pleasantly until one of the hands burst through the door. "Mrs. Boone! Riders coming fast. Looks like trouble." Elias was already on the porch, rifle in hand. When Sadie joined him, a group of rough-looking men approached, led by someone Sadie recognized with a chill. Jake Carter, Tom's younger brother, recently released from prison. "Boone," Jake called out, his hand near his pistol. "We got business. State it from there." Elias replied coldly. "You cost my brother everything. He died in that prison, broken and bitter. I aim to settle that score. Your brother was a thief and a liar who got what he deserved." Jake's face contorted with rage. "He was family, and out here, family debts get paid in blood. Not in front of my daughter," Elias said, his voice deadly quiet. Mary had appeared at the door, eyes wide. "Sadie, take her inside." "No." Sadie stepped forward, surprising everyone. "Mr. Carter, I understand your grief. Losing family cuts deep, but your brother chose his path. He tried to destroy what we'd built through lies and intimidation. Don't follow him down that road." Pretty words from a pretty lady. Jake sneered. "But they won't." His words were cut short as horses thundered into the yard. Sheriff Cray and a large posse surrounded the intruders, guns drawn. "Jake Carter," the sheriff announced. "You're under arrest for the robbery of the Wells Fargo stage last month. We've been tracking you for weeks." Jake's hand twitched toward his gun, but found himself staring down a dozen rifle barrels. His men threw down their weapons, recognizing defeat. "This ain't over, Boone," Jake snarled as they led him away. "Yes," Elias said firmly. "It is. The Carter feud dies here." As the dust settled, the quilting circle emerged, shaken but full of admiration. "Sadie Boone, Mrs.," Henderson declared. "You faced down those outlaws like you were born to it. I was born to protect what I love." Sadie replied simply, "We all find our courage when it matters most." That evening, after their guests had departed and Mary was tucked in bed, Elias and Sadie sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of gold and crimson. "You took a terrible risk today," he said softly. "Confronting Jake like that. I've learned from the best. Sometimes words can prevent bloodshed better than bullets." He pulled her close, mindful of her expanding middle. "When did you become so wise?" "Somewhere between that first stagecoach ride and today. This land changes people. Elias, it strips away pretense and shows us who we really are." "And who are you, Sadie Boone?" She considered the question. "I'm a woman who found herself by losing everything. A singer who learned to birth calves. A city girl who can read the weather in cloud formations. A scandal who became respectable through grit and grace." She looked up at him. "Most importantly, I'm your wife and Mary's mother." "That's worth more than all the society approval in Philadelphia." "Speaking of Philadelphia," Elias pulled out a letter. "This came today, from your father." Sadie stared at the envelope, her maiden name written in her father's precise script. With trembling hands, she opened it and read aloud. "My dear daughter, I have learned through mutual acquaintances of your marriage and circumstances. Time and loss have taught me the cruelty of my actions. Your stepmother passed last year, and I find myself alone with my regrets. I was wrong to cast you out, wrong to value reputation over my own child's happiness. If you can forgive a foolish old man, I would dearly love to meet my granddaughter and the man who saw your true worth when I was blind to it. Your loving father, Charles Morgan." Tears slipped down Sadie's cheeks. "After all these years, what do you want to do?" She wiped her eyes, thinking, "I want him to come here, to see what we've built. To understand that his rejection led me to something far greater than anything Philadelphia society could offer. Then we'll invite him. Family should be together, and Mary should know her grandfather. You're a good man, Elias Boone. I'm a man who learned that love is worth more than pride. You taught me that." As darkness fell, they remained on the porch, hands intertwined. Inside, their daughter slept peacefully. Around them, their ranch spread out, hard-won and deeply loved. The journey from mail-order bride to beloved wife, from bitter rancher to devoted husband, had been fraught with challenges, but every trial had forged them stronger. "Do you remember," Sadie asked, "that first night when you wanted to send me away?" "The biggest mistake I almost made." He kissed her temple. "Mary was right to trick us into meeting. She saw what we were too stubborn to admit, that we needed each other. That we were already looking for each other, across all those miles and years of loneliness." A coyote howled in the distance, no longer a frightening sound, but a familiar part of their desert symphony. Soon their second child would arrive, adding to their joy. Her father would visit, a reconciliation she'd never expected. The school would open, bringing education to a new generation. The ranch would continue to prosper under their joint care. "I love our life," Sadie said simply. "Even the hard parts? Especially the hard parts. They're what make the good parts shine so bright." Elias stood, drawing her up with him. "Dance with me, Mrs. Boone. There's no music. There's always music when I hold you." They swayed together on the porch, beneath stars that had witnessed their entire journey. From desperate advertisement to devoted marriage, from strangers to soulmates, from broken individuals to whole family. In the window, unseen by her parents, little Mary watched with a smile. Someday, she would demand the whole story, how her city mother and cowboy father found love against all odds. And they would tell her about courage and forgiveness, about building something beautiful from ashes of the past, about how sometimes the wildest hearts make the strongest homes. But tonight, they simply danced. Two souls who had crossed a continent and conquered their demons to find each other. The mail-order bride who was too wild had become the beloved center of a rancher's world, and in the vast, unforgiving beauty of the desert, they had carved out their own piece of paradise. "Forever?" Elias whispered. "Forever," Sadie promised, and under the eternal desert stars. They sealed that promise with a kiss that tasted of dust and dreams, hardship and hope, past sorrows and future joys. A kiss that was uniquely theirs, born of a love that had conquered all. The end. Thank you so much for listening to this Wild West love story. I hope Sadie and Elias's journey touched your heart as much as it touched mine while sharing it. Where are you listening from today? Please leave a comment below. I'd love to connect with fellow Western romance enthusiasts from around the world. Don't forget to subscribe to the From Wild West channel for more passionate tales of frontier love and adventure. Share your thoughts about Sadie and Elias's story. What was your favorite moment? I can't wait to hear from you all.